So welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me. I always love to start off just by giving the person I interview an opportunity to introduce themselves. So can you maybe tell them a little bit about what you do and maybe even include how we met?
Sure. Hello, everybody. I'm Shantera Chatman. I am in Houston, Texas. I'm the president of PowHer Consulting. I help my clients to build strong cultures within their organizations through unique learning experiences, which means I take them on a journey and we come out on the other side of it feeling happy sometimes.
But always at least more constructive, right? And able to engage, right? Because I think that having these difficult conversations is super hard. So you give them that safe space to work through it.
Right. We kind of create this Vegas mentality and we kind of go through it as safely as we can. I also am the founder and executive director of the Chapman Women's Foundation. So I help women to just kind of move forward with their dreams and their goals. And during this time, I've been helping ladies, financially being able to just kind of make sure that they're able to provide for their families during difficult times as well. So that's really kind of like my heart's work that I'll do just constantly whenever without a paycheck. If, that's one of those things that I just love to do is see women thrive and grow. And I'm super excited about doing this because I met you on Lunch Club.
Yes, we met online.
Really cool. Online, my first one too. You were my first. So it was really cool.
I really enjoyed our conversation so much. Maybe tell them a bit about your books as well, because you are an author.
I am. So I mentioned that I'm the founder of a women's foundation. So my first two books that I wrote were very much geared towards that audience. The first one was entitled PowHer Play, Women's Empowerment Guide. And my second one, Empowering You, 12 Tips for Finding Your Voice. Those two books are about, just building yourself up, what it took for me to walk away from corporate America. So I use myself a lot in all that I do. I use my stories because that helps other people want to share theirs if they see that you're open to sharing yours. So I share my story of things that I struggled with when I walked away from corporate America and how I had to redefine who I was and redefine my voice as an entrepreneur now and as someone who's helping others. What does that look like on the other side? I also have a book right now. It's entitled Transformative Ally Transformative Ally Framework, where it takes you from going from what I believe are the three phases of allyship, advocacy, support, and coexistence. And that's what I work with my clients on even right now, helping them to build strong cultures by helping them to create allies within the workplace.
Amazing. So maybe we can start there because I think that we're in a time where allyship is so important. What are some of the steps that people can take to, if they're not the ones necessarily dealing with discrimination, what can they do to help create at least a safe environment for others?
The first thing that I tell people who are saying, hey, how can I help? What can I do? I see it. It may not be touching me, but I see it and I want to be a part. My first thing is listening without judgment, listening to understand, which is hard for people. Because a lot of times when you hear someone telling their story, especially a story of maybe discrimination or hurt, you want to step in and say, well, I've never known that to be, or, that's never happened to me. If you just be quiet and allow someone to tell their truth, because it is theirs, it may not be yours, and find a way to empathize with them, that goes a long way.
Yeah, maybe to make this super practical, what would be sort of if someone was telling their story, what would be a good way to sort of empathize with them, but not sort of take attention away from them as well?
What we're saying is if someone is in their story and you really can't, it's not something that is outside of your wheelhouse. You've never experienced those things. Let them finish sharing. And if you feel comfortable, because, this is all about everyone's comfort level. And if you feel comfortable and want to be a part and want to help and want to really empathize with the person, it is quite okay to say, wow, I've never experienced anything like that before. Tell me what you need from me. It's okay to ask because they may only need you to listen or they may need you to help to initiate conversations, but you have to ask them what they need and, how they want you to go about it. Because also, someone asks you to do something that you don't feel comfortable with, you have to be willing to say, hey, I don't know if that's kind of my thing. I can get you to this point, but I may not be able to get you all the way to point Z.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really about being able to listen and being honest with yourself and being honest with the person that you are working with or you're talking to, and saying, hey, I have no idea what this is about, but I'm willing to insert myself if you want me to.
Great. And I mean, I guess I'd also just love to hear, how did you become comfortable having these difficult or complex conversations?
Oh, I became comfortable having these conversations because I got thrown into some of the
Mm-hmm.
craziest situations while I was working in corporate America. And I wanted to be able to share how I was feeling. So, just in full transparency, I've had things happen in corporate America that people wouldn't believe, from my tires being slashed at work
Mm-hmm.
to people telling me, that my voice got on the nerves of the men that I work with, to, I walk in the room a little too confident. I should just tone it down just a little bit. Those types of things happen to me often. And I didn't at first know how to have a conversation about it. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. So it really took me going to therapy. It took me having to go talk to someone else about how to share my feelings, not necessarily about what was happening, because I understood what was happening very clearly. I understood that what they were saying was discriminatory. I understood that the male dominated field that I was working in was starting to come back at me and,
Mm-hmm.
close in on me. I just needed to understand how to be assertive and how to be strong for me and how to use my voice. And so I had to go to therapy to learn how to do that. And it just kind of came to me after, everyone has a limit, how
Mm-hmm.
much they're willing to take before they have to speak up, before they have to say something and have to share. And I reached that point, in my late 20s when I was like, okay, this is enough. I need to really be able to say something here.
Great. And so, it'd be great to sort of hear, so, you decided to speak up. What happened next? Where did you go next?
So when I had the conversation with my supervisor about my tone of voice, by my voice being too deep, what they thought was my voice was too deep.
Mm.
My question was, what am I going to change? How am I going to fix that? And that I needed to figure out how to be less confident when I walked in, because the men, and they literally said the men in the room were frustrated with me. And so I knew that was the beginning of the end for me. I was like, Shantera, you have to figure out your exit strategy. This is not going to serve you any longer. And so what I did was I had the conversation with him, and I told him, one, that sounded very personal, that it was not a professional comment that he was making to me. That was a personal comment that I chose not to try to fix. That's something that he needs to try to fix. He needs to try to figure out for himself why my voice makes him upset, or any of the other men in the room, so to speak. We had a very open and honest conversation about my presence, and that it was very intentional that I walked in a room strongly. I wanted to be able to look people in the eye when I spoke to them. I wanted to be able to assert confidence and exude confidence. It's something that I've always worked towards. I explained that I didn't even really understand why a boss would say that was a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And from that moment on, I just started to take the steps to leave the company, because I knew that there was no way I would be able to climb the ladder if they were irritated that I was becoming a strong person, becoming a strong woman. Now, mind you, they hired me right out of college, so they were used to seeing me as someone that had to groom and model and mold. And when I guess I did not become the person they wanted me to be, which was kind of under their wing, I actually was starting to, kind of expand my own wings and chart my own path. It became a frustration point for them and a point of contention. So I knew that I needed to started taking the steps to leave.
And what did you do next? So, you know, you removed yourself from this situation. Where did you go next?
So when I decided to leave that company, I'd been working there for 13 years. It was all that I knew. And I took a little break actually and started to work on my women's foundation more. I took a year and I focused on, you know, what I wanted to do next, how I wanted to be perceived next, how I wanted to move forward. And that's really where that first book came from. Um, guide, a woman's empowerment guide, PowHer Play, because I wanted to write down the things that I struggled with and how I struggled with them and how I wanted to move forward and what questions I asked myself. And I put all of those in the book, and I, you know, just continued to work more with women, and then eventually went back into corporate America just for into a smaller firm that focused on a different audience, just to see, you know, hey, I'm not gonna say everybody's like that. I'm not gonna say all companies are bad, and maybe I need to work with a company that's a little bit smaller. Maybe that'll help. So that's what I did next, was go into a smaller firm.
And what did you find?
I found that I found that there's always, you know, politics. There's always office politics. I found that I did not like being a part of office politics. I didn't care very much for that. I wanted to be able to chart my path and be able to be allowed to grow into it. I wanted to be empowered to do the things that I felt like I wanted to do. And actually, that's when I really started to work with diversity and inclusion. I became that company's lead diversity inclusion person, traveling to different offices, speaking on how the firm believes in diversity, how they believe in supporting someone who's different, and, you know, the different ideas, diversity of ideas versus, and not just skin color, all of those things. And I also, you know, sadly found that that same little, I'm going to say, for lack of a better word, you know, just prejudice is still there. Because I was told in the midst of all of this, where I was riding high after 3 years with that company, that I was a dangerous pick for their clients. Their clients were white men, and white men don't want to work with Black people. And that came from the vice president of the company, which means, you know, it's going to be very difficult to fight this. Even though I'm the diversity and inclusion lead for the entire firm, it became ugly really fast when I called her on her comments. And so that was unfortunate. And that's really what, when I left that company, the second book came, Tips for Finding Your Voice, because I realized that I lost my voice in the middle of all of that. In the middle of all of that, I didn't know what to say. I was blown away. And a lot of times I just cried. And eventually my husband came to me and said, you're going to have to do what you tell all the other women to do. You're going to have to decide the route you're going to take it and move forward. And you're going to also have to talk. And so that's where that second book came from, because my husband pulled me out of my funk. And he was like, no, we will not be sitting here crying every day because of what she said. You're going to move forward, and you're going to, you know, be strong and be bold like you teach other women to be.
I love that. And I love how also you use sort of your experiences and use them to help teach and show others what is possible, because that's always the question. I think a lot of times when we find ourselves in these professional settings, you know, who can I look to? A lot of times you can't look to those people within your organization for that support. So having the types of books that you've written, I'm sure, can make those sorts of conversations, I mean, not necessarily easier, but at least you know you're not the only one.
Right.
And so, you know, what happened after that? So after leaving that next organization, is that when you sort of set up your consulting business?
Yes, I worked with a business partner initially. You know, we kind of, you know, said, hey, we're going to leave here and we're going to do our thing. And that's what I was doing. I worked with her for 3 years as a consultant, and, you know, we did very well. And it wasn't until last year that we decided, hey, I think we have different paths that we want to take. Not that we didn't work well together. It was just that, you know, she had a goal and my goal, they were not gelling. You know, I definitely still saw myself as someone who wanted to build and create better cultures. And that wasn't in line with the mission and the vision that we created for the firm. So it wasn't until last year that I stepped away completely on my own and started to build my consulting firm.
Great. And so tell us maybe a little bit more about sort of your principles for building and developing strong cultures that you've been working on.
So for me, I wanted to ensure that my clients understood that the words that they have on the walls, those missions and visions that people see when they walk in the buildings, that those words matter. People actually take those words seriously. And especially these days, when you Google a company, because a lot of times if people are going to go for an interview, they're Googling the company, they're reading about them, they're reading the history. And to walk into a space and all of a sudden the culture isn't what they thought it was going to be, that's shocking. And sometimes it's very disheartening, especially if someone has, you know, taken the time to do the research, gone through the interview process and accepted an offer. And once they get there, realize you guys aren't inclusive at all. You guys don't really value my opinion. You just want me to sit here and, you know, do what you say do and not have a thought, not have a thought of my own, nothing original. And so I want to be able to work with clients who are open to having the conversation about changing the words on the wall or changing their actions in the room. And so that means I need courageous people. My clients tend to be very courageous because they're doing something that not everyone is doing, admitting that they are wrong. They're saying that they're going to give up a little bit of that extra power that's inherently given to them as the leader of a company or a leader of a team in order to bring their teams closer together and to share. And so when I say I'm going in to work with you, it literally is a partnership. There's a lot that goes into understanding what a team needs because everyone is not the same. And I like to say that I like to create these unique learning experiences because I want to kind of make them submerge them into what it feels like either to not be included or to not feel like they've been duped by a company, or even just what does it feel like to feel empowered? Understanding that some of your team members may or may not understand what those things feel like. Even though you think you're giving it to them, they may not feel like they've gotten it. And so those principles that I, tend to like to really define are around being open and honest and being willing to share the wealth, which is the power that comes with building a brand, building a culture, writing a mission and vision, those things. We tackle it together as a team, or I'm not there to help you tackle it.
I really love that. As someone who's worked primarily within like fast growing startups, I've seen firsthand how culture can really negatively impact not just the people, but also the growth of the company as well. And so for me, I know when we first met, I was just like, yes, this is absolutely amazing. And so if you were to talk to maybe, a company that said something along the lines of, because this is what a lot of startups would be like, they'd be like, well, this is all well and good. We understand it's important, but we can't necessarily invest in it. What would you say to them?
I would say you can't afford not to invest in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's your people. They are your most important and valuable asset. And if they don't feel included, you're never going to get the 110% that you may need from them on any given day. It's about bringing in for startups. They're like, but we're small. We only have, people. We only have people. But is your goal to have more people? If your goal is to attract more, then you definitely need to understand what it's going to take to keep them once you've attracted them. It's not just about the shiny gold nugget in front of them. It's about what happens once you get them in the door. And then also being aware of culture, because your clients have culture of their own as well. And as a consultant or as a good provider of a service or product, you have to ensure that your service or your product fits in with the culture of your client or your prospective client. I remember being told at one of my firms when I was working in corporate America that they were not in tune with one of their clients. So they were trying to get some new business with L'Oreal, the cosmetic company. And they were going in to meet with kind of like the decision makers, right? The executives for L'Oreal. And they decided to go in with 3 white men to talk about cosmetics. And when they got in the room was very diverse. And it was maybe 1 man and the rest women. And they were asked immediately, how did they determine who was coming into the meeting? And the firm said, oh, well, we're the executives, we lead the team. And so which one of you actually can talk to me about applying foundation to your face? Which one of you could talk about eyeshadow, moisturizer, all of these things? And they looked dumbfounded. And so L'Oreal was very clear in saying, we don't want you. You just showed us what your culture looks like. You just showed us how you lead. You are not a fit for us. And they were excused from the meeting within like 10 or 15 minutes.
Wow. And I think that just goes to show, right? Whether you're a small startup or a larger firm, this is something that everyone really should be taking seriously. So in terms of figuring out whether or not a large firm or a smaller company is ready to work with you, what are you, what are you looking for?
I'm looking for, so when we have these open conversations, typically if someone reaches out to me and says, hey, I would love to have you come work with my team, there are lists of things that I would like to know from that company. I would like to know, one, the size of the company, right? Mm-hmm. Do they have a mission and vision in place? Are they happy with that mission and vision? Do they feel they are living out that mission and vision with their team? Would their team agree or disagree? Because it's one thing for a leader to say, oh yeah, we're doing great. But do you mind me talking to a few of your team members about that same thing? And also, are you going to be willing to have open and honest conversations, not just with me, but with your group of leaders that we're going to be working with? Are you willing to be vulnerable from the standpoint of hearing that something isn't working right and not having your team members to feel uncomfortable later if they feel like they're being attacked or have repercussions against them for not agreeing with you? So I'm looking for those teams who are just willing to be open, who are ready to take the good with the bad, and also know that it's a journey. This is not something that you can just check off a box and say, okay, done, culture's created. That there's going to be work that's willing to be put in even after I'm long gone. And understand that sometimes the culture may change because life happens, because the world keeps evolving, and you're going to have to maybe start over a little bit. You bring in 3 or 4 new people and all of a sudden your culture is different. So we need to probably do a few little refreshers, get everybody on board, that sort of thing. So I want to ensure that they are in it for the long haul, that it's not just a check the box, we need to get this done.
Great. And I think that's a really good segue. I'm curious in terms of what you're seeing in the world now, because so much stuff has turned to remote working. What does your work look like now? Has it changed in any way? Does it make it easier?
Actually, it has changed. I was telling someone last week that actually my clients have changed. Initially, I had my focus being here in Houston, Texas, were on the larger oil and gas companies. But now the people who have been calling, clients that I've been taking on, are not necessarily the big, gigantic companies. They have been the nonprofit organizations saying we need to get our acts together, because not only are we working with our internal teams, but we're working with the public. We're working with those out, everybody else. Our volunteer base is different, our clients. So I'm working with these mid-sized companies and nonprofits now that are, really trying to, make changes, which is great because you need your community organizations to really kind of drive this change. It's also a little bit more difficult because everything is virtual. So trying to share intimate conversations or trying to create the safe space that I would be able to create if I was in an office with these people is a little bit different. So we have to take it slower. We have to understand where we are. We have to, kind of deal with technology. It is what it is on any given day, right? So it makes things just a little bit more challenging, not impossible, just a little bit more challenging.
Great. And I think this would also be, a good opportunity maybe to talk a little bit more about your nonprofit and the work that you do to support women.
Yes.
Yeah. How can people get involved? And what is your focus for your nonprofit right now?
So my nonprofit, it initially, it is, always to help women to achieve their goals. So we've been able to provide scholarships and grants to women who are building businesses, to women who are young women who are trying to finish school, or even older women who are trying to, get that degree that they never were able to get, and also help ladies who are getting out of shelters, just trying to drive forward the idea of, regardless of where you are, taking steps forward. Baby steps or not, they're still steps forward. As long as you're not going backwards, you're going in the right direction. And so we try to help women do that. Now, during these times with COVID-19, I've had to kind of pivot a little bit and focus on, helping those women who are struggling right now. Like there are so many women that call me that all of their kids have contracted COVID-19, or they've contracted COVID-19, but they can't afford to isolate themselves from their children because they're single mothers, things of that nature. So I've been able to work with great sponsors who've provided me with financial support to be able to financially support those women, helping them to ensure that their lights don't get turned off or they don't get evicted, because there are so many landlords that aren't caring about COVID-19. They're still, evicting families, putting them out on the street. So I've been able to help women to just keep their bills taken care of or pay for groceries, that sort of thing during this time, which is something that's needed. So I'm grateful to have an organization that can pivot and help where there is an immediate need.
Great. And if someone was interested in supporting you with this work that you're doing, what would be the best way for them to get in touch?
If someone was interested in supporting me and the work that we're doing with the Chapman Women's Foundation, it would to go to our website, chapmanwomensfoundation.org. And I have a volunteer sheet there. So people could either volunteer, fill out a little quick sheet. It sends me a message and I'll reach out to you. Or if they just wanted to donate, there's donation opportunities there as well.
Awesome. So I'll make sure I put that in the notes. But yeah, I guess it'd be great to sort of end with, do you have, any advice for people that are looking to have these hard conversations around diversity, whether it's, what we can see superficially, or whether it's more about being more open to having people who think differently and maybe even have different beliefs?
Yes, I would say, one, check yourself first and make sure that your biases are known. We all have them. So there is no, I have no bias. I have no, we all have something. And so understanding what your limits are before you engage. And then if you're going in to have a conversation, just start with listening. That's the easiest thing you can do, is to just listen. Be quiet and if you are going to interact, allow someone to share their story, and not try to change their story and not try to make their story yours. Understanding at this point, especially for leaders who have teams, that it's not about you, even though it may be difficult, understanding that you have to engage. The one thing that I have been getting from some of the larger companies is leaning on their people of color to teach everyone else during this time. So leaving those people, leaving those Black women and men and all of those minorities to bear the burden of teaching their staff in the midst of them still trying to understand and grieve for everything that's been going on their own. And true leaders step up, and true leaders don't wait for someone else to do it. I would say allow your teams to your minority team members the time to share their emotions if they want to. If they don't, they don't. But also don't put an extra burden on them to teach you something, because it's not about you. It's about them. The main thing about having empathy is to understand that you need to be empathizing for someone. It's not that they are empathizing for you.
Wow, thank you so much. I love, yeah, love listening to you. And you know, if people want to get in touch with you and learn some more about your culture curation programs, how
Mhm.
can they find you?
They can find me ShanteraChatman.com. You can find me on Instagram. I do a lot of posting on Instagram and LinkedIn with my name, Shantera Chatman. So any of those places is a great place to reach out to me. I respond to emails very quickly. I respond to direct messages very quickly. All of those things that are out there, just because right now it's important. And if someone wanted to have a conversation with me about coaching them or working with their teams, I'm definitely open to it.
All right, well, thank you so much for your time and for your thoughts. I always learn so much, yeah, listening to you. And I think everyone who has a chance to listen to this will learn a lot too.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.